Food prices to double by 2030, while demand for food will increase 70% by 2050, according to a report just out from Oxfam. To avoid what it calls an age of crisis, Oxfam is calling for more regulation of commodity markets, an end to biofuel subsidies, increased investment in smallholder agriculture and more corporate responsibility as part of its Grow campaign. Oxfam's Head of Research, Duncan Green, joins me now. Good morning. So why are average food prices set to double and what can we do about it?
Well, there's a combination of factors. There's yields are not rising as fast as they were, so we're not improving the output of agriculture. Lots of food is being diverted from into fuel tanks in the form of biofuels. You've got rising evidence of climate change, which is already costing $50 billion a year in terms of the impact on food production. And you've got a lack of investment from governments. So it's a combination of problems and neglect, which really has to be turned around over the next few years.
Let's just focus on biofuels for a moment. Why do we need to end the biofuel subsidies? Why is that so important?
Well, you've got 40% of the US maize crop is now being diverted from food into cars, into fuel tanks. That makes no sense in terms of climate change because it's actually not reducing carbon emissions. It may make sense in terms of energy security, but do we really want to buy a bit of energy security at the price of food security for the world's poorest people? So we're saying that biofuels may be part of the long-term energy solution, but it mustn't come at the expense of food production.
OK, now turning to companies and the sort of influence they can play, you mentioned a food price index as one particular thing, the Food Justice Index. Now, how will this index influence the regulatory framework? And how can you incentivise companies to take part in it?
Yeah, I mean, companies have to be part of the solution and definitely shouldn't be part of the problem. So we need to see companies investing in the right things, not investing in the wrong things. We need to see companies involving smallholder production. There are still 500 million small farmers in the world, 2 billion people altogether, a third of the world's population. They have to be involved in food production and they have to get benefits from their crops. And the best way to do that is to involve them in these kind of large global value chains. And Oxfam's done it on the ground. I was in Tanzania last week talking to people who are working with small farmers, getting them into these global food chains. So we mustn't fall for that sort of myth that big is beautiful. In terms of agriculture, actually small is beautiful and it can work.
When will it be launched and do you have any companies who are already sort of buying into the idea?
I wouldn't dream of giving away what the index is going to say. It will be launched in a couple of months. And the idea there is that in any business sector, you have a range of performance, and what you always want to do is to reward the good guys and draw attention to some of the laggards.
OK. Now, land investment, when that started out a few years ago, it was pretty hair-raising. It's evolved quite a lot since then. There is some kind of government control. The World Bank's, got it. A lot of organisations have it under scrutiny now. Are you condemning all land investment deals, or do you think that some work? I mean, obviously there needs to be investment in land, particularly in places like Africa, so that people can grow their own food.
Absolutely. No, the Grow campaign is calling for more investment, but it does depend on what kind of investment. So what you've now had with these large land investments, it's now reached about 80 million hectares, according to the latest figures, which is twice the size of Germany. It's massive. A further problem that's emerged, it's now sort of 2 or 3 years we've had this process, is that actually a lot of them don't result in very much farming, that people are taking out these big land contracts and then just sitting on the land and not developing it. So they're not even that productive. So whether you worry about the terms of the contract or whether you worry in terms of production, it's clear that the level of scrutiny, which you mentioned, the World Bank and so on, a lot of voluntary guidelines isn't really doing it. And it's going to be down to investors and governments to actually start making sure that these investments really work.
Now, the G20 has looked at some of these issues and it's definitely moved up the agenda, whether it's around the land investment or control of speculation on commodity markets. That's another area that you've looked at in your report. What can be done and what sort of support are you getting from the G20 leaders in terms of really not just talking about it, but actually getting something done?
I think the G20 under the French presidency has really taken up these issues very well. I mean, it's given them a high priority. And we're optimistic about what can happen at the summit in November. On speculation itself, we think the evidence is mixed. We're not saying all speculation is bad. Some speculation is necessary in terms of hedging and in terms of insuring yourself against market fluctuations. But the volume of investment suggests that we really do need a bit more knowledge about where it's going. There may be cases for things like price limits, where if prices vary hugely in the course of a day, you have a circuit breaker, a calming period. So there are some things that can be done on speculation, I think, and they need to be done, and the G20 is looking at them.
That's where we'll have to leave it. My thanks to Oxfam's Duncan Green. I'm Camilla Reid, and this is Reuters.